Parashat Bo has within it so many significant ideas in Yadus, Makas Bechoros, and Yitzias Mitzrayim. I'd like to talk about something less important, but I think in the end we'll come up with a significant idea. Many of us every morning say the Yud Gimel Midot She'ata Nidreshet Bahen. Okay, they're midos that we darshan psukim with. And one of them comes up in this week's parasha and leads to an interesting idea. The pasuk says, Shivat Yamim Matzot Tochelu. Okay, there's a mitzvah of eating matzah 7 days. Great. The problem is there's another pasuk in Parashas Re'eh in Sefer Dvarim that says, Sheshet Yamim Tochal Matzot. Okay, what are we going to do with the pasuk? One says you eat matzah 7 days. One says you eat matzah 6 days. The answer is one of the Yud Gimel Midot She'ata Nidreshet Bahen. Davar Shaya Bichlal V'Yatsa Min HaKlal. Right? The first pasuk says 7 days you eat matzah. The second pasuk says 6 days you eat matzah. The seventh day was part of the klal. V'Yatsa Min HaKlal. Now it's left the klal. Lo l'lamed al atzmo yatsa, ela l'lamed al klal kulo yatsa. Right? It didn't come just to teach about the seventh day, that the seventh day doesn't have an obligation to eat matzah. It came to teach about all the days. And the limud is, all the days are not a chiyuv in matzah. Wait, can that really be? What about Leil HaSeder? Could anybody think there's no mitzvah d'oraisa to eat matzah at the Leil HaSeder? So the answer is no, of course not. Ask the Gemara, Yachol af Laila HaRishon? The answer is not Laila HaRishon. Why? Talmud Lomar ba'erev tochlu matzot. There's a separate mitzvah to eat matzah at Leil HaSeder. But, l'maisa, halacha l'maisa, there is no chiyuv to eat matzah on the other 7 days of Pesach. Why? Because it was a davar shaya bichlal. It was part of the klal. It was excluded from the klal because the second pasuk says sheishet yamim tochal matzot. Therefore, just like the seventh day is not an obligation to eat matzah, so too the other 6 days do not have an obligation to eat matzah. Okay, that's the halacha. No problem. The problem is, and it's not a problem for the Gemara, it's a problem for the Vilna Gaon, who's quoted as saying that there's a mitzvah to eat matzah all of Pesach. Wait, what does he do with this limud? So there are two possible answers that I want to discuss with you. There's the first one that people say, and there's the second one that I think is true. I'm not saying the first one isn't true either, but the first answer is no. When the Vilna Gaon says it's a mitzvah, when the Gemara says it's reshus, it means it's reshus legabe chova. But it doesn't mean that it's not a mitzvah. If you eat matzah on the second day of Pesach, you'll get a mitzvah of eating matzah. However, you're not obligated to. So if you don't eat the matzah, there's no problem. But if you do eat the matzah, you'll get a mitzvah. There's all kinds of different ways of sort of playing that through, but that's the fundamental idea. But there's another idea. And it's this idea that I think, I wish I knew who I heard it from. It's possible I thought of it myself, although I doubt it very much because it's a great idea. But the idea is as follows. Okay, what's the definition of matzah? The definition of matzah is aborted chametz. Literally, it's something that had I let it sit there beyond 18 minutes, would have the definition of chametz. But since I aborted the process beforehand, it's defined as matzah. Now, why does this matter? Well, let's talk generally about mitzvot lo taseh, right? How are you yotze a mitzvah's lo taseh? It's hard to know. Like, what if I sat down for dinner and I took a steak and I poured myself a glass of milk? And then I said, well, really, I'd like to have a glass of milk with my steak. But I'm now going to have kavana to be yotze the mitzvah of lo sivashel gedi bach alevi mo. So it's silly. It's artificial, right? Nobody does that. And poskim and rishonim and balei musar for sure say, don't do that. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're about to sin so that you can overcome your yetzer hara to not sin. Except when I eat matzah, what am I saying to myself? I'm saying to myself, I really want bread right now. I really want chametz. But what am I going to do? There's an Isser Torah to eat chametz. So when the Vilna Gaon says there's a mitzvah to eat matzah, he doesn't mean the mitzvahs aseh of eating matzah. He means the kiyum aseh of not eating chametz. The pasuk says, ki kal ochel chametz v'nichrasa hanefesh ahi, etc., etc. There's an isser d'oraisa to eat chametz. Every time I eat matzah, right, it's one or the other. When I eat matzah, I am by definition not eating chametz. If God forbid I ate chametz, I'd by definition not eating matzah. But there's nothing in between. They're the flip side of each other. So says the Vilna Gaon, when I eat matzah on Pesach, you're right. It's not the mitzvah saseh of achilas matzah. That mitzvah saseh doesn't apply. That's the limud from the Yud Gimel Midos Shaton and Drashis Bahan. But what it is a kiyum of the lo saseh of ki kal ochel chametz v'nichrasa. That's the end of the pasuk. There's a mitzvah to eat matzah. There's a lo saseh to eat chametz. When I choose to eat matzah, what I'm saying is I'm choosing not to eat chametz. And when I choose not to eat chametz, I have a kiyum of the mitzvah of achilas matzah. Not again the mitzvah saseh, but in this roundabout way, I have a kiyum of not eating chametz. And, just to make the obvious point, part of Pesach is not eating chametz. There's all kinds of drashos and all kinds of explanations for what it means. But the point is you're not allowed to eat chametz on Pesach. And the way I make that point is by eating matzah. Shabbat shalom.